and a CDK4/6 inhibitor. And in the second line, you can use either a same CDK4/6 inhibitor or a different one with fulvestrant, if not previously used. And in the second and the third line, previous slide please. The third line, you can use everolimus with exemestane, or vice versa also. And currently, what we are seeing is that more and more targeted treatments are coming, and olaparib and talazoparib are category 1 recommendation in the BRCA1 and 2 mutation positive, in the germline mutation positive patients. And for alpelisib and fulvestrant is a second line after one line of treatment in hormone receptor positive HER2 negative breast cancers, and in triple negative breast cancers, atezolizumab with albumin bound paclitaxel is used as in the case of PDL1 at least 1% of positive patients, and rare fusions like NTRK fusion, we have got targeted treatment larotrectinib and entrectinib, and in MSI high and patients across tumors, we can use pembrolizumab. Next slide. So what is alpelisib? Alpelisib is a target the alpha isosome of the PI3K pathway, and it has shown anti-tumor activity in preclinical models. And in the early studies, alpelisib and fulvestrant has shown a 9.1 month of median PFS improvement in ER positive advanced breast cancers. Next slide. This is SOLAR-1 study on which it has got the approval. That is men or postmenopausal women, hormone receptor HER2 negative advanced breast cancer after one line of AI or hormonal treatment, and either a tissue PIK3 CA positive mutation positive, or circulating cells positivity should be there, and it should have measurable disease, ECOG 1 or less are included, and they have got first they randomized to PIK3 mutation and PIK3 non-mutation. In each arm they use alpelisib and fulvestrant and placebo with fulvestrant, and the primary endpoint was PFS. Next slide please. So what they have shown is that PFS is exactly doubled, and there is a very good separation of the graphs from the first 2 months itself. So the median PFS of alpelisib and fulvestrant is 11 months versus placebo with fulvestrant is 5.7 months, and the hazard ratio is 0.65, and p-value is highly significant, 0.00065. Next slide please. And whether you have used the CDK4/6 inhibitors in the first line or not, the improvement the PFS is maintained. So these two graphs are showing. On the left side, we are seeing the previous use with the CDK4/6 inhibitors, where the median PFS is 5.5 versus 1.8 months, and in CDK4/6 naive patients, the median PFS is 11 months versus 6.8 months. So whether you are using your palbociclib or abemaciclib or ribociclib, in the second line, alpelisib with fulvestrant is showing improvement in the PFS. Next slide please. So another thing is that people will ask whether this circulating tumor DNA test is, if it is positive, will it be the same as that of tumor tissue uh, positive? So this slide is showing that whether it is uh, PIK3CA mutation from the plasma or PIK3CA mutation from the tissue, the median PFS is 10.9 months or 11 months respectively, compared to the placebo arm where there is 3.7 months and 5.7 months. So this is whichever is positive, you can take it as PIK3CA positivity and you can use alpelisib. Next slide, please. Now, what about the OS? OS is a secondary endpoint, and because it is very difficult to show OS in a hormone receptive positive breast cancer, because it might take many years to get an OS benefit, if at all there is an OS benefit, and it depends on many other factors like what are the treatments used in the further lines of treatment. So OS, in the early OS, I will show a slide towards the fag end of the presentation, which is the current OS. But here in this study, SOLAR-1, when it was presented, the OS was not significant. Next slide, please. This is the main intention of this presentation. When we are using alpelisib, it has got its own characteristic side effects. How to deal with them, that is the question. Next slide. So, dose reduction of alpelisib due to adverse reactions occurred in 55% of the patients in the SOLAR-1 study. Alpelisib plus fulvestrant arm of the SOLAR-1 study. Most frequent adverse reaction, as you all know, occurred in 10% of the patients, leading to dose reduction in the SOLAR-1 study. That was hyperglycemia, 29% of the patients, and rash in 9% of the patients, diarrhea in 6% of the patients, and stomatitis and mucosal inflammation occurs close to 3.5 and 2.1% of the patients. So, among the patients with alpelisib and fulvestrant, 4.6% of the patients permanently discontinue alpelisib, and around 21% of the patients permanently discontinue alpelisib alone, and 4.6% discontinued the combination due to adverse effects. So, how do we reduce the dose? 300 milligram once daily is the starting dose. That is 2 150 milligram tablets once daily, 2 at a time you have to swallow. And first dose reduction, you are chopping off 50 milligram from that. So you have got another 200 milligram tablet readily available, and 200 you can club it with another 50 milligram tablet, so that 250 milligram you can use as a 2 tablet combination. And the second dose reduction, 200 milligram tablet alone can be taken. And if you need 2 dose reduction and further need dose reduction, then the package insert is saying that you can discontinue alpelisib. You should discontinue alpelisib. And in the case of pancreatitis, you can reduce the dose only one time. Next slide. So this is the slide which we have discussed previously. Hyperglycemia occurred in 65.1% of the patients, and grade 3 hyperglycemia 32% of the patients, grade 4 in 4.7% of the patients, diarrhea altogether around 54.4% of the patients, and grade 3 7.7% of the patients, and rash occurred in 39.6% of the patients, and grade 3 rash occurred in 13% of the patients. And even though the grade 3 and 4 side effects are relatively less, and it has got a predictable nature, and it can be safely taken in the actual clinical practice. It is not a bad drug to deal with, and smaller incidence of decreased appetite, stomatitis, weight loss. Weight loss is around 26% of the patients, but grade 3 weight loss, that is 3.6% of the patients, and alopecia is seen in around 21% of the patients. And next slide. How do you manage these characteristic side effects? That is the idea of presenting this set of slides. So even Novartis was very happy to discuss it very openly, because every treating physician should be knowing how to deal with these characteristic side effects, especially the hyperglycemia part. Hyperglycemia in PI3K inhibition has got a characteristic mechanism. It activates hepatic glycogenolysis and reduces insulin receptor signaling and induces acute insulin resistance, leading to hyperglycemia. It blocks glycogen production in the liver and synthesis of transport proteins like GLUT4, which aid in glucose uptake into adipose tissues and skeletal muscle, and glucose levels remain high in the serum. So it block the glycogen production as well as glycogenolysis. So students should memorize these things. And there is hyperglycemia. Therefore, hyperglycemia is an on-target expected effect of PIK3 blockade by alpelisib, and generally it is manageable. Next slide. So initially, SOLAR-1 allowed a patient with HbA1c less than 8, but after amendment of the protocol, HbA1c criteria was changed to 6.4%. So patients were categorized in the study as normal, pre-diabetic and diabetic as per the American Diabetic Association guidelines. And you should know these values broadly, because fasting plasma glucose less than 100 and HbA1c less than 5.7 is normal, and FPG 10 to 100 to 125 and HbA1c 5.7 to 6.5, to less than 6.5 is pre-diabetic, and fasting plasma glucose above 126 and HbA1c 6.5 or above is diabetic. So in the SOLAR-1 study, around 4% of the patients were diabetic, and normal patients were 40% and 56% of the patients were pre-diabetic. Next slide. So among the pre-diabetic patients, 74% of the patients experience hyperglycemia. So it is predictable if you are in the pre-diabetic patch, or in the non-diabetic patients, 52% of the patients experience hyperglycemia. So if you are pre-diabetic range, as per the definition, your chance of getting hyperglycemia is much high, and 87% of the patient with the hyperglycemia in SOLAR-1 study was managed with anti-diabetic medication, and most of them received metformin and other anti-diabetic medications like gliptins, insulins, gliclazide, glyvenlamide, glimepiride were used, and the mean FPG fasting plasma glucose peaked in the first 2 weeks. So you can say that in the diabetic patients, you have to use anti-hyperglycemic drugs. Dose modification might be needed in some patients, and patients should be checked for FPG glucose, HbA1c during initiation of the alpelisib, and you have to see glucose values at least once in the first 2 weeks, and after that every 4 weeks. At least once a week for first 2 weeks, and then 4 weekly. Next slide. So this is another description slide of SOLAR-1 study. Most common adverse effect was hyperglycemia, reported in 65% of the patient, and grade 3 was reported in 33% of the patients, Grade 3 is defined as fasting plasma glucose 250 to 500. Grade 4 above 500, reported in 4% of the patients. And 50% of the normal patients and 74% of the pre-diabetic patients and 83% of the diabetic patients. 50, 74 and 83% of normal, pre-diabetic and diabetic patients each experience adverse effect of hyperglycemia. And mean time of occurrence of grade 2 events were 2 weeks, that is 15 days. Mean duration of alpelisib exposure for patients who develop hyperglycemia is 6 months. And median medication, 87% of the patients were given anti-diabetic medication. Metformin was most commonly used. 76% of the patients received metformin either alone or with combination, and 59% of the patients received more than one anti-diabetic medication. Time to improvement, grade 1 improvement was seen with a median of 8 days. Next slide. So it is very important for the students. CTCAE, the full form is common terminology criteria for adverse events. So you are dividing this CTCAE into 4 major headings. Grade 1, that is fasting plasma glucose less than 160. That arrow mark is reverse. Actually, it is less than 160. No alpelisib dose adjustment is needed. If FPG is less than 140, consider metformin. 140 to 160, you can start metformin. But at the same time, you are not touching alpelisib at all. So you start metformin. Previous slide, please. You are continuing alpelisib in the same dose, but you are starting metformin. Fast plasma glucose 160 to 250. Again, no adjustment is needed. If FPG does not resolve to grade 1 within 21 days after anti-diabetic treatment, reduced by 1 dose level. So even in grade 2, no dose adjustment in the beginning, but if it is not reversing within 21 days, you are decreasing the dose by 1 level. What is 1 level? From 300 to 250. And at the same time, you are starting metformin and add an insulin sensitized like pioglitazone, or there is a new group of drugs that we will discuss afterwards. So these two can be used. So if grade 3 FPG 250 to 500, you omit alpelisib. Here you have to stop alpelisib. If it resolves to grade 1, less than grade 1 within 3 to 5 days, restart alpelisib with 1 dose reduction. If it is not resolving to grade 1 within 21 days, that is 3 weeks, if it is not resolving, then you have to discontinue alpelisib permanently. And here you have to add metformin add to metformin a combination, add pioglitazone, or some cases insulin may be needed. Grade 4 is defined as FPG greater than 500, and here alpelisib should be stopped, as we all know. And if FPG is confirmed at grade 4 in the absence of confounding factors, then you have to permanently discontinued in 24 hours. So if grade 4 is not resolving within 24 hours, even with medication, in grade 4 toxicity, hyperglycemia, then after 24 hours you have to discontinue. Here it is a recommendation same as this thing. You have to start metformin, add another anti-diabetic drugs. You might be requiring insulin, like that. Next slide. So PI3 inhibitors can increase blood glucose, causing a spike in the insulin levels. Lowering insulin may counteract the tumor resistance. And in mouse models, insulin and glucose levels are controlled using ketogenic diet. So ketogenic diet might be helpful. SGLT2 inhibitors is a new group of drugs, novel group of anti-diabetics. Recently, it is approved by FDA for first-line use. So SGLT2 inhibitors are particularly helpful in hyperglycemia associated with the alpelisib. Next slide. Skip this slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this is I'm skipping the. Already there are firm guidelines, so you don't have to follow the NICE guidelines for diabetes control. So SGLT inhibitors recommend a special mention in hyperglycemia developed using alpelisib. So this is a new class of anti-diabetic agents, anti-hyperglycemic agents, whose mechanism of action is of interest in managing hyperglycemia. And 6 patients of SOLAR-1 study have received SGLT inhibitors, and median duration of treatment of alpelisib in these patients receiving SGLT inhibitors were higher than rest of the members of the study. So we need a larger study to see the efficacy, but this is a novel class of inhibitors where you are preventing the reabsorption of glucose from the kidneys. So it has got a novel mechanism of action. So this group of drugs will be especially helpful in alpelisib-induced hyperglycemia. Next slide, please. What about the second side effects? So diarrhea is the next side effect. So which is needing specific mention, because great majority, around 57% of the patients were having some kind of diarrhea, and 6.7% of the patients were having grade 3, and grade 4 were not seen in SOLAR-1 study. And metformin itself will cause diarrhea in around a quarter of the patients. So you have to see whether it is due to the metformin or it's due to alpelisib. Next slide, please. Grade 1, again this it is divided into grades for toxicity management. Grade 1 is less than 4 stools per day. Grade 2 is 4 to 6 stools per day, and moderate increase in ostomy output in colostomy patients, and more than 7 or equal to 7 stools per day is grade 3, and grade 4 is shock or life-threatening consequences due to diarrhea. And in grade 1, no alpelisib dose substitution is needed, and grade 2 and above, interrupt alpelisib dose until recovery to grade 1, and resume at a next lower dose level. Only one dose reduction is permitted, and if toxicity occurs, permanently discontinue. So grade 4, you have to permanently discontinue. Grade 2 and 3, interrupt till recovery. Then restart at a dose, lower dose level, one dose level. So if you are using 300, you have to restart with 250 milligram. Next slide, please. So how to manage this is a description of the earlier slide. You have to use fluid therapy with antidiarrheal cyclopramide with higher grade diarrhea and signs of sepsis. More serious intervention may be needed. For all patients, check the number and composition of the stools. If there are toxic signs like fever, dizziness, and loperamide is recommended. And stay hydrated. Drink plenty of fluids. Eat low fiber diets. So high fiber diet again increases the stool transit time. So you have to use low fiber diet like banana, toast, rice, etc. And eat frequent small meals. And potassium replenishment should be done, like eating bananas, potatoes, apricots, to increase the potassium levels. And avoid dairy products which are irritants normally. Some people will have milk allergy also. Spicy food should be avoided. Alcohol should be avoided. Caffeine and high fiber diet should be avoided. Avoid lactose containing products like dairy products, milk, alcohol, and laxatives. Next slide, please. What about the rash? Rash is also a very common side effect. So there are two types of rash. One is urticarial rash, and there is without urticaria, maculopapular rash. And 36% of the patients received had some kind of rash, and 10% of the patients were having severe rash, either grade 3 or grade 4. Or maculopapular rash is red elevated rash is seen in around 14% of the patients, and 9% were grade 3, and grade 4 rash was not seen. 10% of the rash was grade 3. And rash is again divided into grades. Less than 10% of the BSA, continue alpelisib. Topical steroids can be used, like triamcinolone, betamethasone, and can be used up to 1 month. Burning sensation or stinging or itching should be treated with the non-sedating antihistamines like fexofenadine or cetirizine. And in addition to that, you can take a sedating antihistamine like what we are using in the clinical practice at the night time. If it is not resolved within 28 days, then you adding a steroid might help. Prednisolone 20 to 40 milligram per day can be used. And in the grade 2, 10 to 30% of the patients of the BSA affected, you can follow all the guidelines of grade 1. In addition to that, you can use the corticosteroids upfront. If the rash doesn't resolve to grade 1 within 10 days, systemic steroid can be used. So initially you can use the steroids, and if it is not resolving to grade 1 within 10 days, you can use systemic steroids. Next slide. And grade 3 is more than 30% of the BSA. Then again, here you have to stop alpelisib. If it is not decreasing to grade 1, and you have to start at a reduced dose level. 1 dose level reduction should be done. And if it is not resolving up to 10% of the BSA, after more than 14 days, continue corticosteroids continue oral corticosteroids, Bisolone, for at least 48 hours, and then re-challenge with alpelisib. During the re-challenge also, alpelisib should be overlapped with the steroid. If the rash or pruritus does not recur in the first 48 hours, then systemic corticosteroid should be discontinued. Means when you are restarting, you should start with the steroid. Then see whether it is recurring or not. If it is not recurring within 2 days, you can withdraw the steroid. Like that you have to do in grade 3. In grade 4, extensive superinfection, IV antibiotic needed, life-threatening consequences. Permanently discontinue alpelisib. And you should follow all the guidelines of grade 3 for treating the rashes and skin toxicity. And in some cases, skin biopsy may be needed. Next slide. So, rash management in SOLAR-1 study, 134 patients received anti-rash medication that is constituting 84.3% and antihistamines in around 77% of the patients. And prophylactic anti-rash medications such as antihistamines was found to decrease the frequency of rash. Next slide. And what about these three we have covered? What about the drug interactions? Co-administration is with the CYP3A4. That is mainly anticonvulsants like phenytoin, carbamazepine and all. So that decreases the alpelisib activity. What about the CYP2C9 substrates? So they are mainly warfarin and other group of drugs. They decreases the level of CYP2C9. So if CYP3A4 inducer, you are decreasing the alpelisib activity. In CYP2C9 drugs, those drug activity, not alpelisib activity, those drug activity was reduced. So it is just opposite. And BCRP inhibitors, BCRP is breast cancer resistant proteins inhibitors, may increase the risk of toxicity of alpelisib because it increases the plasma level of alpelisib. So when you are using alpelisib, avoid the concurrent use of BCRP inhibitors. Which are these inhibitors? Next slide will summarize. Next slide please. CYP3A4 inhibitors inducers are mainly anticonvulsants, phenytoin, carbamazepine, rifampicin. So we can use other group of drugs for control of seizures. BCRP inhibitors are ketoconazole, lapatinib and pantoprazole. And CYP2C9 substrates are warfarin, tamoxifen. Tamoxifen anyway is not recommended with alpelisib. Fluoxetine, that's an antidepressant, glimepiride, gliclazide and neticlinide. So these anti-diabetes we can avoid using. Losartan and montelukast, which we are using for allergy purpose. Next slide please. So this is main presentation is over. Now we last ESMO presented the updated OS. It is not the graphs are not separating, but there is a numerical benefit. The p-value is not significant. The numerical benefit is 7.9 months improvement in the median OS, 39.3 months versus 31.4 months. The hazard ratio is 0.86, p-value is not significant, that is 0.15. But if you are analyzing the subset analysis, there is a 14.4 months improvement in the median OS in visceral metastasis like lung and liver metastasis, 37.2 months versus 22.8 months. And in the circulating DNA positive patients, there is a 9.2 months increase in the median OS. So this data is important. It is important in such a way that it was showing a tendency for improvement in the OS, but it is not statistically significant. But the PFS, as we said in SOLAR-1, is highly significant. Next slide please. This is it's not very important because we have right now discussed a very important study like SOLAR-1. Real world data doesn't match up with the phase 3 study data. So what they are trying to explain is that in the real world data also, if you are using alpelisib after CDK4/6 inhibitors, the benefit is maintained. That we have seen in SOLAR-1 study also, but in SOLAR-1, the number of patients who received CDK4/6 inhibitors were less. So that is why this slide was inserted. So they are claiming, it was shown that in the real world data also, this is reflected. Next slide. This part we are not explaining because it is still not published. So what they are trying to explain is that even in HER2 positive post trastuzumab and pertuzumab, there are studies ongoing of alpelisib. It may not be in the future restricted only to hormone receptor positive patients. Lot of exciting studies across tumor spectrum also it is coming. Other than breast cancers, also it will be used. So there are so many breakthrough studies are coming. It will change the clinical practice. That's all I think. Thank you.